Welcome to Generation Digital Workforce, the podcast that's here to explore the role of robotic process automation and other digital technologies. Whether you're just getting started or you're looking for advanced strategies and tactics, if you're curious about where human and digital workers are coming together to transform the future of work, then this podcast is for you. All right, let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us this week for Generation Digital Workforce. This is Zena, and I'm coming at you from Austin, Texas. You're going to be really excited you joined us today because my guest is none other than Eric Wilson. Hi Eric, welcome to the program.
Hi Zena, thank you for having me on.
Where are you at today?
I am working from home.
Are you?
Just outside Dallas, Texas, thanks to this wonderful thing known as COVID-19.
Awesome, Dallas. All right, so I'm in Texas as well, down in Austin. I did not realize you were a fellow Texan.
Yep, just north of Dallas, actually up in the McKinney area.
Okay, great. Well, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure, I am the Director of Partner Integrations for Blue Prism's Digital Exchange. I've been with Blue Prism for about a year and a half. Prior to Blue Prism, I held positions in professional services, consulting, and product development for a couple different companies, including Avaya, HP Enterprise, Dimension Data, and actually a smaller managed services consulting firm. And as far as what I do, I manage a team of technical consultants that are tasked with growing our digital exchange marketplace.
Okay, so you manage a team responsible for working on the digital exchange. You said you joined us about a year and a half ago. Why did you decide to jump into managing the digital exchange at Blue Prism?
Well, it was really an interesting opportunity on a couple fronts. One is around technology. So I've been interested in RPA for quite a while. My past experience includes a good deal of work with automation in the contact center space. So RPA and intelligent automation dovetail really nicely with that past experience. While the idea of automation is nothing new, though the technology around RPA has been evolving rapidly. So it was really appealing to me to get into it and to get some hands-on experience with it. It also, as far as this opportunity, presented a new challenge for me as I was asked to build this brand new team from the ground up. So it was a chance for me to kind of step outside my comfort zone because I've always traditionally been more of a individual contributor in most of my roles. So the idea of taking on this task of building a team, taking on the management experience was a new challenge.
Well, everybody's always up for a new challenge, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the technology first. What exactly excited you about this technology?
I guess the answer is that the technology is so varied. In other words, we're not working with any one specific technology day in, day out. Since my team's focus is on getting new assets or integrations built for the digital exchange, we touch on lots of different technologies, whether it's cloud, artificial intelligence, machine learning, DevOps, containers, anything. There is potentially a need to leverage those technologies and integrate them with intelligent automation. So we've got a real kind of day-to-day things change mentality in our group. And it's really nice not to be stuck with any one particular thing for a long period of time.
And what excited you about the team building aspect?
Team building, it's amazing. I wasn't really all that sure how I would come across as a manager. I think I've done pretty well, unless my team is lying to me. But I've really enjoyed it. It is an entirely different perspective on things from the more focused, I'm a technology individual, I'm focused on the technology. So when you get in and you do more of that team building, that people role, it helps to, I think, ultimately round out your skill set quite well. And so it's been very interesting.
And so as you've been building out that team, do you have both digital workers? I'm assuming human workers as well, but you have digital workers on your team?
I do. I have, on the digital worker side, we've got a couple digital workers that we're using within the team. And then on the human side, I've got consultants basically spanning the globe. So I've got folks in North America, I've got folks in the UK, some folks in Singapore. So it's quite varied.
And as you have been building a new team and building it using both, human, if you will, and digital workers, how have you approached that? Like thinking about what roles and responsibilities, if you will, are best suited for what type of worker?
Well, within my group, we spend a lot of time thinking about how we can apply intelligent automation to improve the life of the RPA developer. So, what can we do to make it easier to develop automations? One of the first things that we did was create a digital worker named Sergei. And Sergei is capable of interpreting API documentation and then automatically generating Blue Prism skills based on that documentation. Sergei can also submit those skills directly to the digital exchange, and he can monitor ultimately the APIs for new versions and then turn around and update the existing Blue Prism skill to include any new features or functionality. So prior to this Sergei digital worker, this capability, if you wanted to integrate with, say, Google's their Vision API, you'd have to manually create a web API definition or build a visual business object that implemented that web service with all the various vision methods that it has. And that could, potentially take you days, even multiple days, if necessary. But with Sergei, it can all be done automatically. We just simply tell Sergei where to find the API, and he does all the work, and he can do it in the blink of an eye.
So then how have you developed this interactivity between your teams? So if Sergei's out working that quickly, how is the rest of the team responding?
So far, I think it's been really good. I think by by allowing the digital workers to focus on certain areas, that frees the people in my team up to focus on additional areas or alternative areas. So Sergey is doing a lot of the asset building for the digital exchange. My human team members are focusing more on the people connection with our TAP partners, our technology partners. So they're doing a lot of the work with those partners to identify use cases and have that communication around things that we can do to incorporate Blue Prism with their particular technology platform, whatever it may be. So they're really focused on that communication, building those relationships with partners, and Sergey's doing a lot of asset building. So it's a really good mix, I think, on how things are done within the team. But it also, I think, really opened up the eyes of a lot of people, not just in my team, but in Blue Prism in general, to see different areas that intelligent automation could be applied.
Yes, agree. Sometimes we tend to think of automations as, the more basic or routine things, but digital workers can actually do quite a bit of advanced thinking, if you will, especially once you add those cognitive capabilities to them that are available on the digital exchange.
Exactly. And when you think about it, Sergey is really this idea of digital workers building other digital workers. So it's really kind of cool to think about, okay, where can we take this now?
It is. And I do want to think about that and talk about where could we take it now. But given where we are in the time of all of us being working from home, as you mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 is impacting us all globally. Could we spend a little time thinking or talking about what a digital worker could be doing right now today to help, all of us in the situation that we're in?
Absolutely. So I think there's really a lot of potential. Probably the most basic idea is with more people being asked to self-quarantine or to work from home, you might run into cases where companies have legacy systems that simply aren't accessible through remote means, or at least not easily through remote means. If you've got a VPN, you might be able to do things that way. But for some companies, especially small to mid-sized companies, they may not be able to afford a VPN. So a digital worker is an area where interaction with a legacy system like a mainframe or a homegrown Windows application or something like that, a digital worker could take over some of that interaction and could ultimately provide a bridge to the people working at home, potentially sending emails to the people at home to give them updates about, we updated these customer records today based on information that we received from System X or something along those lines. So I think there's a lot of capability there, a lot of flexibility there to address any issues that pop up with this kind of forced remote work for companies, especially when they're not really accustomed to having to work in this fashion. Beyond that, it's really kind of sky's the limit too, because with the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning and these extra capabilities that are being merged with RPA and intelligent automation, it opens the door for digital workers to be used to help run tests on drug trials or genome sequencing. Any of these things that you're hearing a lot of in the news right now as people work on vaccines and trials, those are all areas where you potentially could leverage digital workers to take the load off the humans to focus on other areas while the digital workers kind of go through a lot of that redundant kind of trial and error functionality.
Yeah, that would be, I'm sure that all of our medical community would very greatly benefit from having some digital counterparts helping to manage all of this data and the peak, and able to move it quickly and react to it more quickly.
I think so, absolutely.
Let's think forward to, let's say, 12, 24 months from now, and kind of, if you will, maybe almost blow our minds a little bit, Eric. What could a digital worker be doing 24 months from now that maybe seems a little impossible to those of us who are, just your average employee at the companies that we work in today?
Well, I can tell you specifically within my team, we're in the process of hiring our next digital worker who we've named Deming. And Deming is going to be a QA digital worker. And what I mean by that is my team deals heavily with the digital exchange. So as partners or citizen developers submit assets to the digital exchange, ultimately those assets have to be reviewed to ensure that they follow best practices. There aren't, hard-coded passwords or just, weird things going on within the asset. So up until now, that's kind of been a human action. A human would take a look at things, do some basic testing of the assets. So what we're doing is upskilling Deming, our QA digital worker, to take over that role. So when an asset is going to be submitted, it will now be reviewed by Deming to basically make all of those checks. So again, make sure it's following best practices, make sure there aren't hard-coded passwords, things like that, weird HTTP calls on the internet or things along those lines. So that's kind of the next step for us with a digital worker. But really, again, it's another one of those, the sky's the limit. Where do you want to apply automation? What are your use cases? And I think we're finding more and more every day as we look through it.
So one of the things that I've been hearing a lot about lately, given the COVID-19, is the idea of telemedicine. Could a digital worker be a teledoctor?
A teledoctor, I think a digital worker right now could certainly assist in that area. And I think we're probably already seeing some of that. I know the National Health Service and a couple other organizations are leveraging digital workers quite heavily. So I think digital workers could certainly do a lot to survey patients to determine, okay, what symptoms do you have and things along those lines. But ultimately, the digital worker would then direct any of those calls to an actual doctor to perform any sort of diagnosis or things along those lines.
That's awesome, though. Again, kind of going back to the assistance that we were talking about, so many of our first responders and medical teams could be using right now. Great to think that you could have a digital worker that was able to, do that triaging before and free up our, medical professionals to tend to those that are in most need.
Absolutely.
So, Eric, as our listeners out there are other technologists such as yourselves, and they are exploring the idea of jumping into having a digital workforce, what advice would you give technologists looking to explore this industry or to get their businesses involved in having a digital workforce?
So I think as far as a technologist looking to get into the industry, probably the first thing that I would suggest is to simply start working with RPA. Blue Prism offers trial versions of our software, so I would strongly encourage anyone to go out, download a copy, to their laptop. It doesn't take up a lot of space, and just start trying things out. Get familiar with the ideas and concepts around intelligent automation. Build your own little automations within your kind of personal day-to-day processes. Everybody's got something that they end up doing, whether you're going out checking your bank account or paying a tuition bill or something like that. Build your own automations just to get familiar with it, to handle those actions and see what it's like. Beyond that, I would say if you're not already learning about new and emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, get started. Those are just a few of them, but there are a lot of areas that are becoming more and more important to intelligent automation. So start to research and understand what those technologies are and how they can be applied. And then lastly, I'd say brush up on your coding skills. There is a growing push for no-code, low-code environments within intelligent automation, but there will be an ongoing need for development and programming skills for the foreseeable future. There's always going to be some kind of use case that's going to potentially require programming skills. So I would certainly recommend that people, if you're not familiar with programming, go out and take a course or two and just kind of get familiar with what's involved, because at some point you'll be able to leverage those skills.
Okay. And how about a little advice for our business people out there who are, thinking about growing a team? You talked to us a little bit about how you approached, thinking about your team and growing your team and dividing roles and responsibilities, between your human and your digital workforce. What would those top 2 or 3 things be that they should be thinking about as they're planning to bring digital workers onto their team?
So on the human side, I would encourage people to partner with a great recruiter. And if you're looking to hire in different international locations, make sure you partner with a recruiter that has experience and knowledge in those geographies, because you'll face all sorts of legal and hiring differences across borders. On the digital worker side, I'd say look at your day-to-day processes. Are there processes that are error prone? Areas that include a lot of cut and paste or a lot of spreadsheet manipulation or report generation, those could be prime targets to look at hiring a digital worker to fulfill. And those are kind of what I'd call sort of your entry level sort of process areas. So they're really good kind of low hanging fruit areas to try it out initially. Also, if you have new areas of responsibility that you're being asked to take on, consider whether those are something that a digital worker could handle. Because if you could start out with it from the very get-go, that might be a really easy way to get RPA brought into your environment.
And as I'm looking at the things that a digital worker could potentially do, is there kind of a 1, 2, 3 in as far as the level of complexity that I should be thinking about for my digital workers as well?
I don't know if there's so much a 1, 2, 3. I mean, there are any number of levels of complexity to business processes in general. If you're completely new to intelligent automation, I'd certainly look for something that tends to have fewer steps to it, just to kind of get the ball rolling. So if you've got a process that requires, just an arbitrary number, 50 different checks or 50 different steps along whatever that process workflow is, that might not be the best option to start out with initially. Maybe look for something that has half that, or something that has 10 steps, if at all possible, especially if it's just, your first use case with it. As you get rolling on that first use case and you start to understand how intelligent automation functions, then you kind of grow from there and you start taking on those larger processes.
Awesome. And one last question, if I may. How long did it take you to build Sergei and train him to do what he does?
So from conception to his first run was probably about a week. And something else that's important to understand is Sergei is always learning. I'm continually teaching him new things. So it's not, at least in his case, it wasn't, hey, this is done, throw it out there and let Sergei run. You can certainly do that depending on what the processes are, but for us, Sergei is kind of a bigger picture item. So the initial development on Sergei was about a week, and then at the end of that week, he was able to generate about 170 assets from a single source, which was outstanding. And now we're looking to expand that further with some additional intelligence that we're putting into him. So we're looking at thousands of assets coming into this now.
Amazing. benefiting everybody who uses the Blue Prism and the Blue Prism Digital Exchange.
Absolutely.
Sergei's working hard for all of us.
Yes, he is.
So thank you. Thank you for that, Eric. So we've reached the point in the show now where I like to throw out one final question that I've chosen to call my Xena Zinger, just to have a little fun.
Oh, I'm worried now.
Oh, no reason to worry. It's a fun question. Just to help us just shake off how serious a digital workforce can be, and thinking about just have a little fun with it. So let's see, if a digital worker were a dancer, what kind of dancer would they be and why?
Oh, now you're expecting that I know different types of dance.
Come on.
Let's see. If a digital worker was a dancer, I'll go with samba. Simply because you have to be relatively flexible, and I think digital workers can be very flexible.
I love it. I love it. The answers to this question have been the most fun for me out of all of my interviews and that I've asked. Everyone has had such a unique perspective on this. So thank you very much for yours.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, listeners, for joining us this week. Look forward to having you join us for a future episode. Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to Generation Digital Workforce. If you want to hear more about RPA, AI, and other cognitive technologies that are shaping the future of work, join us next time as we continue to go deeper on these topics with industry innovators and experts. To make sure you never miss a future episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. And if you've liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. It's one of the best ways to help more people find valuable content. For show notes and more info, visit us at blueprism.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.